Welcome to The InEVitable, a podcast by MotorTrend.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast, MotorTrend's vodcast about the future of the car, the future of the automobile, the future of racing right here in Portland, Oregon.
Woohoo!
But before we get to why we're here, Ed has a special message for you.
The InEVitable Vodcast is brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Aria, inspired by the future and designed for the now. And
Literally,
yes,
the now.
Right now. As Jonny said, we are here in Portland, Oregon for a Formula E race. This is the only stop that Formula E makes in the U.S., and we are here to chat with some folks from our sponsor, Nissan Formula E team. And we're going to talk to two young ladies about what they do for the Nissan Formula E team. But before that, we do have a question in the episode, completely unrelated to racing, but it's a good one because it is front of mind for a lot of folks in the automotive industry. And it comes from a gentleman by the name of Luc Boulanger. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. From Instagram. He says, question for the InEVitable podcast. I brought my bicycle bell. With Chinese companies offering EVs for $10,000 US and potential tariff even at 100%, puts these vehicles at $20,000 US. How much impact will this have on the North American brands to develop a lower priced option, as well as how much market share will the Chinese Chinese EV makers take from North American auto manufacturers? You basically summed up the entire trade argument that's going on right now.
You also summed up what most board meetings at Ford and GM and Stellantis look like these days.
Yes.
Because, you nailed it.
So he's talking about, Luke, great question, Luke. Thank you. We'll send you some swag. So you're asking specifically about the BYD Seagull, which is like $11,000. Our colleague, I don't know if you know this,
Frank Marcus. Yeah, you told me all about it.
Went to a one of these tier one supplier type companies called CareSoft, and went through their whole demo on Chinese EVs, and they
demolition.
They take them all the way down. I mean, they pass them through an MRI machine, like a giant automotive MRI machine. They scan them. They can see the batteries, the bodies.
Yep.
They cut them in half. Cut them into half, and then half again, and half again, half again. They cut them all into little bits.
And so they do that and look at them. Then they let them rot for about a year. They let all the pieces, and they put them in like high humidity, high salt environments. They do all. I mean, it's wild what they do.
These companies basically tear down. They do competitive analysis, and what their business is, they sell the information back to other car manufacturers, and they can advise them on how the competition is making their margins, and also where they could take cost out of their own products. So this whole thing, and this is not a very well understood part of the automotive industry for most consumers, but and GM's famous for this. In year one, the car will be amazing, and they'll have essentially overbuilt it.
Right.
And then in year 2, 3, 4,
the
engineers
out of it,
figure out how to take cost out to improve the margin of the vehicle over time, which is why a rattle you didn't have in the first or second generation suddenly shows up in the fourth one. Now, back to China. So, there are several car manufacturers out there from the Chinese market that are coming out with low-cost vehicles. To be clear, not sold in the U.S. There is not a traditional, one of these new, or traditional Chinese brands in America yet. The closest thing we have is Volvo
and Lotus.
Volvo and Lotus, which are owned by Geely. This is that consortium. And much to the chagrin of a lot of the UAW, GM is selling a couple of Chinese-made Buicks in the U.S. So that's as close as we get. It is the existential threat, yes, to the auto industry as we know it in America, if and when these Chinese manufacturers land here, and whether they will enter the market with not just the sub $35,000 or sub $30,000 EV, but people are wondering if they're going to make it in here with a sub $25,000 or even a $20,000 EV. I'm of two minds. I think for mass adoption to take place, we need these EVs to be the lowest price they can be, because the general public does not care for expensive vehicles. That's how Toyota and Kia and Hyundai won the day. It's with
and Honda, Nissan, and
all the low-priced subcompact EVs. Yes, so they will come in, and they're going to absolutely disrupt and blow up the market. Because why do the Chinese manufacturers have the edge with EVs in particular? Because they know how to build the batteries, they know the electronics. This is what they've built all of our iPhones and our Android phones forever. This is right up in their wheelhouse, and they don't need to have the competitive advantage and the economies of scales and all the factories built for internal combustion and all of that. You don't need that.
They can wipe that away.
Yes.
Yeah, they're struggling. And again, in other countries, China specifically, like consumers aren't going back and forth like, well, do I really want an EV? Maybe I need a plug-in hybrid. They just like, the government says like you're all going to be buying EVs. Like, okay, so,
right.
and again, and the labor, they just don't have the labor cost we do, which is why most U.S. factories left and went to China in the 80s, anyways. I think one thing that that I don't know if this teardown that Frank went to has shown is, can that potential $20,000 Chinese EV pass a U.S. crash test?
Yes.
That actually might keep them out for a little while. We don't know. No one's actually crash tested them, but the U.S., thankfully, for a lot of reasons, has the highest crash standards in the world. Especially
Euro might.
No. U.S. is way higher. I mean, it's, like to get top safety pick plus, you have to be able to 5 stars on a front offset, which is
but Europe allows laser headlights, and we don't allow that yet.
We're starting to. That's going to change. Actually, that's changing real soon. But that's not crash. That's not. No. Crash is passive.
That's crash
avoidance.
avoidance.
But no. We're talking about crash safety. Are you going to lose a leg? In cars with the 4 or 5 stars in the U.S. Crash rating, you're not going to lose a limb. We don't know with Chinese cars. Could they do it? Absolutely. And look, you go back to the movie Tucker, which was about the Tucker Corporation in 1948 and how the big three sort of conspired to shut them down. And one of the famous things was, hey, if we don't do something about whatever what's the word I'm looking for? The decadence of the big three. Like soon, the Japanese are going to be building our radios, and somebody laughs, and you can laugh about Chinese cars, but you can also go into Walmart and
Sure.
With the exception of produce, 100% of what's there is built in China.
Right.
So.
Well, so that is part of
it. Is existential.
To bring it back to Luke's question, how much impact will it have on North American brands to develop lower priced option? It is
Huge.
already happening.
Huge.
Okay, so that is
Huge.
one thing that people need to get over. We need to get over some of this American exceptionalism. These are multinational companies that have to. The greatest way that they can sustain themselves is to build the vehicle once and sell it around the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, there's 330 million Americans, and we're comparatively real rich and buy a lot of cars, but there's a lot more people in the world. So,
right.
You can't just yes, pickup trucks. We have this market and profitability locked up there, but we got to think about the rest of the world. To that point, Ford just announced they're opening up a campus in Long Beach.
Yep.
That's specifically to work on a $25,000-ish global EV platform, and everyone's jumping on this bandwagon. Jeep says they're going to have a $25,000
Sure.
Renegade.
To answer your question, yes, they are pushing North American brands to develop lower priced options. How much market share will Chinese manufacturers take? Who knows? And to Johnny's point, there's all sorts of things that happen within the industry first. These Chinese brands first need to set up shop here, build the retail channel. We've seen that's been a little bit of a challenge for folks like VinFast, Fisker.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell cars. Everybody thinks
Americans
Tesla
are sophisticated consumers.
Yeah.
So.
Everybody thinks Tesla made it look really easy by going just to direct online sales and no dealerships. A lot harder than you think to enter the marketplace. And then, as everybody knows, it's going to be especially hard for a Chinese company in the current political climate, right? Mm-hmm. The joke, and not a very good joke, that I always say is, well, it kind of when are Chinese manufacturers going to make it into the U.S.? It depends when they invade Taiwan. That's a joke. That's not a joke. There's all sorts of saber rattling happening, and of course, our own government has thrown its gauntlet down with the 100% tariff that they put on Chinese EVs. So, I wish I had a better answer, a more definitive answer, but
also, always remember, and this is what this podcast is about. Things change.
Yeah. 1965,
General Motors had 61% of the U.S. car market.
Yeah.
61%. In 2005, 6, I believe, they They
were walking around the Detroit Auto Show.
19%.
Oh, I thought it was 20. It was 20.
I think it was 19%.
They would have these little lapel pins.
That said 19%.
Showed how much market share they have.
And now they're down to like sub 10. So things just change over time.
Yep.
And consumers have shown, like, again, go back to 1986 when the Hyundai Excel showed up. Nobody thought they'd be driving a Hyundai. Now a lot of people drive Hyundais. You go back to my dad had a Datsun, tied back to Nissan, had a Datsun 280Z after he loved English sports cars, had a bunch of Triumphs and stuff like that. They didn't start. Guess what? The Datsun started every day. He really liked that. So
Way to bring it back to Datsun, by the way.
Thank you.
So great question.
Yeah,
Thank
really,
you.
really good question.
Thank you, Luke. And the swag's on its way to you. Let's talk a little bit about our guests. A little bit of a longer intro this time around because we had a brief
time-limited
interviews with our two guests because they are, again, on Nissan's Formula E racing team.
Apparently, actually getting the car running is more important than talking to me and Ed, which
Weird.
I find hard to believe.
Yes.
But Nissan feels different.
But we have Cristina Fernandez, head of performance and simulation for Nissan's Formula E team, and Charlotte Henry, systems engineer for the Nissan Formula E team.
Give me their background because we had such a short interview that I don't know anything about these two.
Right. So Cristina, head of performance and simulation for Nissan. She has been with Nissan for only a brief amount of time, I think around 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, September. So.
But she has a lot of experience at top-level racing. She previously worked for Williams at the advanced engineering team for 6 years.
Okay.
Performance and lead data science engineer, performance engineer.
And that would be Williams F1.
Yes.
Yep.
Simulator performance engineer. She worked as a development engineer for Campos Racing Tech. So she has race all over her, and you'll hear it in how she talks about what she does. And similarly, Charlotte Henry, the systems engineer for Nissan's Formula E team, she's been with the team for 3 years. And she used to do their simulator coordination, Nissan. So both of these ladies have advanced racing simulator experience, which we're going to talk to them about.
Mm-hmm.
And they have very interesting perspectives on how they got into motorsports, what drives them, and what makes the series interesting and exciting. So
let's bring them on. Yeah.
Without further ado, Cristina and Charlotte. All right, well, Cristina, Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us. Exciting race weekend here in Portland. First off, we did a little intro, but let's just clarify. What exactly do you do for Nissan's Formula E team? We'll go with Cristina first.
Yeah, sure. So at Nissan, I'm responsible for the performance and simulation groups, which essentially means it's going through the data analysis and understanding the performance envelope of the car so that we can then give our recommendations and suggestions going forwards and help the engineering group make the right decisions on the race weekend.
Okay. And Charlotte, same question to you. What is your day-to-day on a race weekend like this?
I'm system engineer, so I'm in charge a bit of all the electronics part of the car. And all the electronic systems, so sensor, brake-by-wire, and stuff like that. Cristina is more on performance side, and I'm a bit more on reliability side.
Okay.
So as soon as we're done with this, what are you doing for the rest of the day? Because the race is tomorrow, or one of the races is tomorrow. What's the rest of your day look like?
So it's very structured, to be fair. It doesn't really matter that we're at Portland or anywhere else in the world. We go through a very structured process, and we basically go through the preparation that we've done back in the simulator last week. We then go through last year's data, if they exist. So we've already come on to Portland last year, which means we can go through what we did. And then with that, then we prepare run plans, we prepare the potential test items that we're going to go through FPs to get them ready to qualify. There's a couple of things that changed on the car this year, especially the tires is the one thing that's slightly different to last year, which means that we always have to keep in mind that we may need to update a bit the past year's data analysis that we did to then fit onto the current car and the current spec.
So you ran here last year but on a different tire. Is there anything particular about the Portland track that that you need to take into account? Is there anything with the weather, or any big difference between last year and this year that you have no data for, like you can't account for?
Yeah, I mean, in a place like Portland, it's a bit easier in a way because it's a permanent track. So it means that we're not driving around in the middle of a city where the tarmac changed from one year to the next.
Right.
So from that perspective, is a bit of a better known. The layout in itself is the same as well, but things like the weather, effectively, it is true that it's changing a bit. It rained yesterday, but it didn't happen last year, and that may change the grip conditions, starting especially on shakedown and FPs. So there's always a bit of an unknown. There's always different from track to track, even if you've got past years data.
And Charlotte, same question to you though. So what your day? What's it going to look like today?
I'm fully dedicated for the car. So today I will bleed my front powertrain, my rear powertrain. I will check the brake stiffness, some stuff like that, calibrate sensor and so on.
So just hands-on with the car, making sure it's okay. And you're more on a laptop looking at variables and like what did the tire change? How's that going to affect what we did last year?
They're definitely complementary jobs. So she's got to make sure that the car gets going, and that's not going to stop on track, and that's reliable, and then we try and see how we can go fast.
Right.
And you both have simulator in your background. I kind of looked both. You might see me on your LinkedIn profile. I was like, oh, okay. So I saw your racing background. I saw yours as well. And you both have done some simulator. You've done some simulator work.
I was operator at the simulator, so it's a bit like what I do now on the car. I just manage the simulator, sensor, screen, and so on.
How does that work? Jonny and I were talking about it earlier. Is it difficult to work in a simulator environment for Formula E because it's such a specialized racing series? It's, I always think simulators are like video games, and we know there's all these other video game and simulators that are consumer available, but I've never really seen one for the Formula E series. Is that, or are you just building your own based on the data you're collecting? Is that correct?
So it really isn't a game in the sense that this is very much an engineering tool.
Okay.
Ed.
Sorry, I didn't mean it.
We've not done a few years of university to go to
right.
playing with games. But I get exactly. I mean, from the outside,
I think it's fun. It looks like
absolutely. It may look like a big video game kind of thing, but really we use it for not just the driving side of things, but also as an engineering tool in the sense that. Typically on simulator sessions, you're going to have a bunch of engineers going around, from systems engineers to performance, race engineers, strategy engineer. Really, everybody's going to be in the room with the driver, preparing the race weekend, effectively. So it's a tool. I mean, the big part of the simulator is really to correlate it so that it reflects as much as possible the behavior of the real car. So that's one of the things that's a continuous work to try and make it look like and representative to the car behavior, but this is why once we do that work, then again when we're there in a simulator, is very much rehearsing what's going to happen on the race weekend and do a lot of engineering tests to try and understand what may be the best working condition for the coming layout and coming track that we prepare.
How hardcore is the simulator that Nissan uses for Formula E? Like is it 6-axis with like a brake disc? Is it that level? Because I've seen an F1 simulator where they literally, the brake pedal was connected to a rotor and a pad to get the feel exactly right.
Yeah. No, I think we're probably not at the level of Formula 1, but surely we've got similar in the sense that you've got a motion platform, then you've got the cockpit, you've got systems, what we call the vehicle control module, which is the same kind of like onboard PC that runs on the car. It's also in the simulator, and then the rest of it we haven't got like brake distance. So all of that is model. Let's say is like a simulation environment.
Is it? I always think about, like, again from gaming, but the ability to move the sliders around and you can adjust different parameters. Are you able to say how many different elements you're tracking, how many conditions you have to monitor? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands of?
In terms of
like the variables. So grip, weather, elevation,
tire temperature.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
I mean, all of that we can certainly model. It comes down to the accuracy of the model, but anything is possible, really.
Okay. So how did you get into this level of motorsports? Right? I think it's normal to love cars and even love racing, but this is a very specific thing you guys are doing. And Charlotte, you first. Like, did you ever imagine you would be doing this kind of work?
Not at all. So when I was younger, I want to be a pilot for the French army. But I always love high technology, high level of challenge. When I was with my father, we watched Formula E on TV. We watched not just Formula 1 because when I was young, Formula E didn't exist yet, but we watched endurance, all this kind of sport in the TV. And so I started my study to do some engineering stuff, and I met some students who were fully passionate about motorsport, and I fell in love with motorsport like this. So I do the Formula E student project, and I try to work like this.
Huh? Amazing. And now we are at a racetrack, and that they're cleaning apparently, and there's we're near the airport, so you're going to hear some stuff in the background. It's totally fine.
Okay.
But Cristina,
same question to you. Did you ever think you'd be, head of performance for a major race team in a major series?
Yeah, so it all really started with Alonso. So I'm actually from Spain, and there was at the time Fernando Alonso in Formula 1, and so my dad would watch it because everybody would follow Alonso in Spain.
Yeah.
And so I would then watch TV with him, and it started by that actually. It wasn't so much into the drivers themselves, but I was much more attracted by the cars behind. And so from an early on age, I knew I wanted to go through the engineering path and especially into racing.
Oh, amazing!
And as as women, it's getting more and more normal, but it is still unusual to see women as principals or mechanics or engineers on race teams. Like, has it been easy? Has it been not an issue? How's the experience been?
Yeah.
Easy.
Okay.
For me, at least.
Yeah, for you. Yeah. Not for you.
Yeah. No, I have to agree with her. I think it's very personal, and you hear all sort of stories, which I'm sure they're all what they are. But in my case, it was also easy in the sense that it's not just coming into motorsport. I think it's from the time you choose to go on to an engineering degree. I think it happens already that the ratio women to men back at university was already much more biased to men, so that I've kind of like grown up
so you're used to
in that environment, and it wasn't really that shocking. Surely then the ratio reduces as you go into something like motorsports, but I think as I've been kind of growing in that environment, it's not really shocking, and I think we get to do the same things really. We all come together to track and do the same kind of job, especially in the engineering side, and then go back at night together at the hotels. There is no really at any point on time during the day where you'd feel that we'd be doing different things just because of our gender.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So let me pivot into a hard question. This is a question that actually we asked our social media followers for some hard questions to ask you guys, and it's about the tech transfer, right? So this podcast is about electrification. It's about electric vehicles.
The future.
It's about the future. You guys are working, you gals, sorry, I keep saying guys, you ladies are working for a Formula E team, which is the future of motorsport. And you're with the Formula E, Nissan's team. This podcast is sponsored by Nissan. When you talk to people about what you do and all the EVs that are coming, can you point to any specific technology that maybe Formula E or Nissan in particular has delivered that maybe they can see or understand in the car
that's
they
in
drive?
A passenger car?
In a production vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the fundamentals of electric motor development, for example. How an electric motor works, and especially the regeneration part, which is kind of like goes away from like normal hydraulic braking that is all developed especially for electric cars. And that's all the technology that then we're able to develop for racing. We've got the resources to do so, and then that ultimately usually gets transferred onto the electrification for road cars. And in general, I think it's a platform where you can explore different technologies for an electric vehicle, and then ultimately put that onto the road. But I think it starts from the fundamentals.
Okay. Charlotte, do you have a point of view on?
Totally agree with Cristina.
So braking, I think people understand the regen side. How about on the output side, right? I did a little bit of studying on the Formula E, the difference in the generation of the cars. The power output has gone up considerably. The acceleration has gone up as well. The charging time is also dropped. Is any of that? Is there any preview of something other than regen braking or coming to production EVs? That you
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes more into the battery storage systems, effectively the batteries, which for Formula E is not down to the teams to develop them. So actually we work in conjunction with our suppliers. And so effectively, yes, the batteries have evolved in the capacity and the output power, the charging time. That's all evolved, but again, that's something that for Formula E is common to all the teams. So it's something where the teams ourselves can not really play much with,
Right.
but effectively is the Formula E pushing supplier to get that technology improved year by year, and then consequently to that, then it means the electric powertrains that the teams develop can evolve accordingly to the batteries technology evolution.
Everybody seems to think that solid state is the future. Do you have an opinion?
Well, everybody on the internet who is not an electrical engineer thinks that.
Yes, but is it a potential solution for racing, or do you have a point of view on solid state?
I mean, I think, let's see what you think, Charlotte. There are some teams or some actually championships that start to try and develop solar race cars. I think effectively even through universities, because at times actually universities they got like research
Right.
departments behind them that actually means that they can also explore those boundaries. I think there are a few prototypes that exist here and there, to whether it's actually viable as like a road solution, and I think still got my doubts about it in the sense that it's not sunny everywhere in the world. So how could you actually ensure that that's a viable solution even at night?
Right.
Oh, he meant. Sorry, just to clarify. I agree with you on solar. He meant solid state battery.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
I thought you were
Language-
I was
language
like, let's
barrier.
go
Very
solar.
interesting.
You should
Nothing
hear
to
his
do.
horrible Spanish. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. So solid state
For you that
batteries.
one, Charlotte, then.
Yeah.
I have clearly no idea of our future.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you go too much into. It's more like battery technology.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a bit outside our scope, because as I said before, we're not the ones developing the batteries and
Right.
stuff, so it's
Right,
a bit
right. No, I don't,
it's
yeah.
a bit outside our expertise.
For whatever reason, that question was repeated like 10 times. Everyone wants EVs to be lighter, and one potential way to do that would be a solid state battery, because you wouldn't have liquid lithium. They'd just be lighter than lithium ion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the electric vehicle itself, it's been evolving, and surely the battery storage system has been one of the fundamental things that's been improving, especially for mileage, range, autonomy, and etc. There's one thing I think as well around the vehicle, which is the infrastructure, is how you actually charge it. How you make sure that if someone hasn't got a plug-in in home to charge the car, can go from point A to B confidently, and it's robust, etc. So I think it goes hand in hand is the electric vehicle, which has existed for a bit already, but it's also the infrastructure, which depending country by country is probably not still there, which in a way is maybe holding back a bit the generalization of the electric vehicle itself.
100%. Yeah.
As much as you've got petrol stations everywhere, it's probably not so easy to go charge your car everywhere. So that's also something that needs to evolve together with the electric vehicle itself.
From a like your point of view, your engineering point of view, like are you how to phrase this? Like did you want to work with internal combustion vehicles, or are you like, oh, EVs are actually, there's more potential, there's more future there?
On my side, I'm not sure if electrification will be our future. I guess every people have their own needs. So if you have a longer way to do, or if you have a short way to do because you live close to your work, I guess there is not one solution. There is many solutions with a fuel vehicle, hydrogen, electric, solar. We can do what our imagination
Right.
wants.
Horses for courses is the American expression. Like, put the right horse on the right course.
Exactly.
So.
I guess our future is not just one solution. It will be many solutions on personal transport, on public transportation. We just have to choose our own needs.
Fair. Okay.
She said it.
So let's bring it back to the race weekend. Folks who are watching the race, let's say it's their first time. Cristina, you're head of performance, and you talked a lot about strategy. Is there anything for just the absolute layman who's watching this for the first time? What would you advise them to look out for from a strategic perspective? Is there something that they're going to, because there's like attack mode, there's all these different very unique elements to Formula E racing.
Yeah, I mean, Portland is a very special track in Formula E in that it's what we call is very energy sensitive.
Okay.
Which means you've got very long straights, which means that we're going to pull out energy from the battery, and we haven't got so many points of regeneration. So that actually means that the drivers and the teams behind through strategy are going to need to do a lot of energy management. And so that means that especially for this job, what the spectator can expect to see is a race that's going to start kind of like slow, in the sense that everybody's trying to save the energy and drive efficiently, and then the race is going to pick up. At some point you're going to see the pace increasing, and then drivers cars go faster and effectively deploying more energy. So it's a bit of a what now start to be called peloton race, which kind of like starts slow and no one wants to lead, because that means when you're in front, all the air is coming through you. You get you don't get
chopping the air for
exactly
everybody else.
You don't get the slipstream benefit.
Okay.
And so it's a bit of effectively this like 5 cars side by side, because no one effectively wants to take a lead to get all of the drag for them. So it's kind of that race that we're expecting, which means from a strategy perspective it's difficult to manage, because it means that you can go from being first to being almost last from one lap to the next, because this big amount of energy save that's going to happen. And then as the race goes along, it means everything's going to start stabilizing, and then you get a bit more of like a standard, more traditional kind of race.
I was just going to say, it's probably very difficult to tell race car drivers, like, go slow. Like, that's probably like the hardest part, right?
Yeah, and it for sure is a complex race to manage as well from a driver perspective, because it's not the kind of race that they used to do. So it's surely difficult for them to even trying to place themselves so that you don't bump into some of the cars when you've got few cars alongside. And how you make around the corner is all that things is a big goes outside from the normal racing that they would have done from the past, etc. So even from a driver perspective is complicated to manage.
Surely you have a button, right, where you can just cut their power by like 20%.
No, for sure. Yeah.
So so Portland. So what I heard is Portland has long straightaways, a lot of speed, energy depleted quickly, and not a ton of corners for you to capture the regen, right? To build it back. So tire wear is not as big of an issue then.
I mean, it always is, and it's something that we engineers account for as well. So based on the track layout, where there's a lot of cornering, a lot of demand to the front axle, it's more the rear axle that's in solicitation. We kind of like get this balance of which tire, which axle, front or rear, is gonna start degrading first. There's always an element of tire degrading in every track. It also very much depends of the tarmac conditions, the temperature conditions. Okay. So it all adds up onto the tire management that we're going to need to do. But essentially is an energy management race. Formula E is mostly about energy management in first place, and then car balance as a consequence of what the tires are.
Okay.
So we heard that next season they're thinking about putting in a recharge at one of the pit stops. Like, you'd be able to possibly recharge. So would that change this race from a peloton race to, like, it's okay, we can put more energy and go faster? Would that or is it, it's still, because there's no regen situations, you still would have to manage it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see next year, but surely the pit stop's going to give you an extra amount of energy, but it's also going to change the strategy in that you've got to manage that lap into the pits and then coming out. So all in all, I would still expect some level of
so this
of
track will be
peloton
like
race.
that in the next year, even with a pit stop.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Well, I was going to ask Charlotte the same question. This podcast will come out long after this race weekend, so it's just,
So we're not
just our
giving
secret.
anything
So we're not
away.
giving anything away.
Okay.
But is there any particular system on the car you are most concerned about or watching very carefully this weekend?
Of like every weekend, battery, brake-by-wire. I will have a look on all the car specification system, temperature and pressure to avoid alarm and reliability issues. So if it's rain, if it's sunny, in fact, I don't care a bit. It's what happened with the car. We have to manage all type of alarms every weekend.
Okay. So at some point during this race, when we see a leader pop out and start going lap after lap faster than the lap, this means that that team, whoever, that driver, thinks they have enough energy to make it to the finish, and that's when the race is like it's on. Is that kind of the?
Yeah, you could expect so, exactly. When
Okay.
I mean, it very much depends of whether the strategy behind is making sense. But yeah, you kind of expect that at the very beginning, the lead is going to be changing every lap or almost a few times through the lap, and then when you start to see consistently that there's someone leading, then it probably means that at that point the race is kind of like picking up, and then the energy targets have effectively risen up enough so that the driver can hold on to the lead without the driver behind having more energy and able to overtake. So yeah, possibly from that point on you can say, okay, now it's switched, and you're gonna then from that point on see a bit more of like a traditional race.
And we're late in the season for this year. There is no one has clinched the championship yet, but you don't have to talk about your own team strategy. But do you expect some of these other teams to use their, let's say, their second driver, the one that's lower in the standings, to be blocking?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's already happened. There's a lot of
Okay.
teammate strategy going on, and we've said in already in a few races, because effectively it means that if you've got your teammate alongside you, then you can be switching back and forth so that you protect each other and let the other car then recover the energy and go back up again in the lead. So surely there's going to be an element on that this weekend coming up.
Drivers, they don't really like that, right? They want to win. They each want to win. How do you manage that, or is that Tommaso that has to deal with that?
That's more on the boss to do. But I think overall, effectively they are teammates. So unless they're both fighting for the championship, and even in that case, I think they all understand that if eventually is the team, and that we want to pull out as many points as possible for the team. So if that comes through having to help each other out, then they're always on it.
Okay. Because I know you guys have to go here pretty soon.
Yep.
We'll get to our last questions. I know you guys have been asked this a lot because I've watched a couple of your interviews. It's how do you get into this? What would you advise a young child who wants to get into motorsports or racing at
Well, it
this
sounds
level?
like you watch F1 with your dad.
Right. But I want to pivot the question a little bit. I was going to ask you, advice for somebody getting into this line of work, but I'm curious what your take is on artificial intelligence, because it seems to be impacting every career path. Do you have any insights? Are you using AI or machine learning for modeling any of what you do?
Yeah, we are. It's already in the loop. We use it to build up stand models for which we don't necessarily have like a physical insight, or for which at times makes sense to do a bit of exploration through machine learning and develop a bit more like numerical models. So yeah, it's in the loop, and it's something that we already use for development.
Okay.
I think my last question for you two would be, your corresponding jobs at other types of racing. What is different about your job at Formula E than it would be? And I'm sure the answer is going to be mostly like battery, but is there a difference?
I'll let you go first.
I'm not sure system engineer on the other category is so much different than me today. It's different car with different system, different type of electronics, different types of sensor, but the day-to-day role is the same.
Yeah, definitely, I could agree. I think the fundamentals is the same. You just get to work with different systems and different strategies that are on an electric vehicle compared to like another combustion car, but fundamentally it's the same.
Yeah, I mean, just like if you look at like, Le Mans just happened, and they're worried about managing the virtual kilojoules of energy and all that. So it's all computers anyways, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean,
modern
it's
cars.
going to be the thing to look at or to watch out for. The most is probably going to be different. Like an endurance race, it may more be about, as you said, the tire, whereas here it may more be about energy management, for example. But fundamentally, I think we'll go through the same elements, and we all look at very, very similar elements.
So my last two questions.
Ooh,
Lightning
two.
round. What cars do you drive?
Ooh.
Okay. And then, long season's almost over. What do you plan to do on the break? So, Charlotte first.
My daily cars?
Yeah.
BMW Series 1.
Okay. 1 Series. Okay.
And for my summer, I guess I will just have some rest with my family after 1 season to not see them a lot. My parents are there in Portland, so I will enjoy 2 days more in Portland with my parents.
Oh, wow.
That's fantastic. Okay. And Cristina?
I've got a Volkswagen InEVitable.
Oh, InEVitable. Okay.
Yep. And for summer, I mean, there is the testing for season 11 coming up.
Yes.
So in fact, there's an element of we never really stop. But then aside to that, I also go see family in Spain.
Okay. All right. Well,
Nice.
thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time. I appreciate you taking this, and all the noise. Apologies. But thanks you. It's a busy race weekend, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
See you soon.
The InEVitable Vodcast, brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Ariya. Inspired by the future, designed for the now.